A man named Earl stands at his mailbox in 1985, holding an envelope. Inside is his very last mortgage payment. He bought his house a couple of decades earlier for around $83,000, a perfectly ordinary, middle-of-the-road American home. And with that envelope, it's finally completely his. No more payments. He owns it free and clear. He feels standing there like he's arrived, like he's done the thing you're supposed to do. Now jump to today and ask a simple question. What is Earl's house worth now? And the answer is going to stop you cold. That same ordinary house is very likely worth somewhere around $420,000. Today, 5 times what he paid for it. 5 times. But here's the thing, and this is why it matters. That 5 times number, as jaw-dropping as it is actually the least surprising part of this whole story. Because what a paid-off house was in 1985 versus what a paid-off house is today has changed in ways that go far deeper than the price tag. And once those changes become clear, you're going to look at the home you're sitting in right now very differently. So today, we're walking through exactly what happened to the paid-off American house over 40 years. The good, the shocking, and the genuinely unsettling. Here's where we're going. First, the real number, and then an honest asterisk on it because part of that 5 times figure isn't what you think. Then the 3 deeper truths that actually stop people cold, including why a paid-off house isn't really free anymore, and the heartbreaking reason your house is worth so much in the first place. And by the end, you'll know what all of it means for the home you own today. Let's start with the number. So let's lock in the headline. In 1985, the typical American home cost about $83,000. Today, the typical American home runs around $417,000. That's roughly a 5-fold increase, about 5 times over 40 years. If Earl or Earl's kids are looking at that house today, it is multiplied in value 5 times over. That's the number that makes people's eyes go wide, and it's real. But now the honest asterisk, because the number needs the truth behind it. A big chunk of that 5 times jump isn't the house getting more valuable. It's the dollar getting smaller. We call that inflation, the slow shrinking of what a dollar can buy. Over those 40 years, prices in general roughly tripled. So that $83,000 house from 1985, just translated into today's money, is worth about $245,000. That's what inflation alone did. So the real honest gain, the part where the house actually grew in true buying power, is from about $245,000 to $420,000. That's still a substantial real gain, roughly 1 3/4 times. Homes genuinely did outpace inflation over these decades. That's true and it matters. But it's not the magic 5 times windfall the headline suggests. About 3 of those 5 multiples were just the dollar melting. That doesn't spoil the number. It makes the truth more useful than the hype. And the really stunning parts of this story are still ahead. And here's one more wrinkle that complicates the rosy houses were so cheap back then story. In 1985, mortgage interest rates were brutal. The typical 30-year rate was around 12.5%, nearly double what it is today. So even though Earl's house cost a fraction of today's price, financing it at 12% meant his monthly payment ate up a big share of his income. In fact, by some measures, the monthly cost of buying a home took a slightly bigger bite of a family's paycheck in 1985 than it does now. So buyers back then weren't living easy. They were getting clobbered by interest instead of price. But here's why Earl won anyway. He locked in that low nominal price, and once he paid the house off, the brutal interest rate stopped mattering entirely. He was left holding an asset that quietly multiplied 5 times over, while he simply lived in it. That's the quiet magic of buying and paying off a home. You freeze the price of yesterday and ride the value of tomorrow. Truth number 1, paid off no longer means free. Here's the first one that genuinely stops people cold, and it's the one almost nobody sees coming. In 1985, when Earl paid off his house, he essentially started living for free. Today, a paid-off house is anything but free, and that quiet change has rewritten the whole meaning of owning your home outright. Think about what it cost Earl to keep his paid-off house in 1985. The property taxes on an $83,000 home were modest, a few $100s a year. Homeowners insurance was cheap, almost an afterthought, and upkeep on a house at those prices was manageable. All in, keeping that paid-off house probably cost him on the order of $1,500 to $2,000 a year. He'd done it. He'd reached the promised land of free housing. Now look at what it costs to keep a paid-off house today. The numbers are genuinely shocking. Nationally, the non-mortgage cost of owning a home, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, and utilities, now runs somewhere between $15,000 and $24,000 a year, depending on the study and the state. That's right. Even with no mortgage at all, the typical homeowner is spending well over $1,000 a month, sometimes closer to $2,000, just to hold on to their house. Property taxes have climbed right along with home values. Two-thirds of homeowners say their assessment has jumped significantly. Home insurance has surged nearly 50% in just the last few years. And maintenance, the silent budget killer, runs 1 to 2% of the home's value every single year. And the home's value is 5 times bigger now. Sit with what that means. The cost of keeping a paid-off house didn't go up 5 times like the price did. It went up something like 10 times. So here's the cold truth. Earl's free and clear house now costs more every single month just to keep, with zero mortgage payment used to be back in the day. Earl's two bills sit side by side, and the contrast is staggering. In 1985, on his paid-off house, maybe $800 in property tax, $300 in insurance, and a few hundred more in upkeep, call it $1,600 for the whole year to keep a roof he owned outright. Today, on that same house now worth $420,000, roughly $4,500 in property tax, $3,000 for insurance, $6,000 or so in maintenance on a much pricier home, and another $3,000 or $4,000 in utilities. Add it up, and you're north of $17,000 a year, more than $1,400 a month, to keep a house with no mortgage at all. Earl went from paying $1,600 a year to keep his home to paying that much roughly every 5 weeks. The dream that paid off equals free housing, the whole reason a generation rushed to burn their mortgages, has quietly, almost invisibly broken. Today, owning your home outright doesn't mean you live for free. It means you've traded a mortgage for a different bill that never ever stops coming. Truth number 2, your house is worth a fortune because your kids can't buy it. The second truth is the one that's less shocking than it is quietly heartbreaking, and it explains why that number got so big in the first place. Go back to 1985. That $83,000 house cost about 3.5 times what a typical family earned in a year. 3.5 times. That's a number a young couple could actually get their arms around. And the proof is in the data. Back then, the average first-time home buyer was around 29 years old. It took about 6 years to save up a down payment, and nearly half of people under 35 owned their own home. Buying the house Earl bought was a normal, reachable step for a young family. Now look at today. That same house at $420,000 costs 5 times or more what a typical family earns. And the human cost of that shift shows up everywhere. The average first-time home buyer in America is now 40 years old. 40, up from 29. It now takes around 15 years to save a down payment, more than double what it used to. And home ownership among people under 35 has fallen from that 45% down into the 30s. A whole rung of the ladder, the one Earl stepped onto so easily, has been lifted up out of reach for a lot of young families. And here's the part that's worth saying gently and clearly. Part of the reason your house is worth so much is that an entire generation has been priced out of being able to buy it. The big number on your home isn't only good news. It's the mirror image of a younger generation's struggle. Earl's granddaughter is 35, with a college degree, a good job, and a working spouse. 2 solid incomes between them. They run the numbers on a house just like Grandpa Earl's. And here's what they find. The down payment alone would take them well over a decade to save, and the monthly cost would swallow more than a third of everything they earn. So they keep renting, and they wonder what they're doing wrong. The answer is nothing. The math simply changed underneath them. Earl's grandkids may look at the very house he bought on a single ordinary paycheck and realize they could never afford it on 2. The number that stops you cold isn't just a price. It's the measure of a ladder that got pulled up behind you. That's not anyone's fault. It's a slow structural shift in the whole economy. But it's real, and it's why so many older homeowners feel both wealthy and a little uneasy at the same time. Truth number 3, your paid-off house quietly became your retirement plan. The third truth ties the first two together, and it's the biggest shift of all. In 1985, a paid-off house was one nice piece of a bigger retirement picture. Today, for millions of Americans, the house is the retirement plan. In Earl's generation, the retirement picture was supposed to work like this: a pension from the company, some savings, Social Security, and a paid-off house as the secure roof over it all. The house was the foundation, but it wasn't the whole house of cards. Now, fast forward, pensions have largely vanished. Savings for many fell short. And so that home, that 5 times appreciated asset, has quietly become for a huge share of retirees the single largest thing they own. Often it's worth more than every retirement account they have combined. Nationally, Americans 62 and older are now sitting on close to $15 trillion in home equity, with the typical older homeowner holding around $250,000 locked up in their house. That's a profound change in what a home even is. It went from the place where you live to your largest financial asset and your last line of defense. And that's a double-edged thing. On one side, it's a genuine blessing. You may be sitting on a small fortune you didn't fully realize you had. But on the other side is the catch we keep circling back to: that fortune is trapped. You can't spend a hallway, you can't buy groceries with the den. And as we saw in truth number 1, that trapped fortune is actively costing you $15,000+ a year just to hold. So a lot of retirees today are in a strange spot their parents never imagined. House rich, cash tight, and quietly paying for the privilege. And that idea, not having your entire retirement depend on one asset, is also why some retirees look beyond just their house, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and real estate. One option people often don't realize exists is a gold IRA. Basically, it lets you hold physical gold coins and bars inside a retirement account, with many of the same tax advantages people associate with a traditional IRA. Now, that doesn't mean gold is magic. It just comes back to the same old wisdom: don't put everything in one basket. For many Americans over 50, a huge part of their retirement is tied up in the stock market, their home, or both. And when you're no longer working, it's worth understanding what options you have for spreading that risk out. So it's a good idea to at least understand how physical gold could fit into your broader retirement plan. If you want to learn more about how a gold IRA works and how to set one up, there's a free gold IRA information guide from Augusta Precious Metals that breaks it all down. You can grab it using the link in the description below. It's 100% free, so make sure you check it out. So let's bring it home. What do you actually do with all this if you're sitting in a paid-off house right now? A few honest, practical thoughts, not commands, just clear thinking. First, know your two numbers, because most people only know one, if any. Number 1, what is your house actually worth today? And number 2, the one almost nobody tracks, what does it actually cost you to keep each year, all in? Taxes, insurance, maintenance, utilities. Write it down. You cannot make a wise decision about an asset this big while flying blind on both ends. Second, build that real carrying cost into your retirement plan, because the house is paid off is no longer the same sentence as housing is handled. It isn't. Plan for that $1,000 or $2,000 a month, and plan for it to keep rising, especially insurance and taxes. A paid-off house is a wonderful thing, but budget for it like the ongoing expense it has quietly become. Here's why that matters so much on a fixed income. If your housing budget assumed the paid-off home was basically free, that $15,000 to $20,000 annual reality can blow a real hole in your year. And unlike a fixed mortgage, these costs climb. An insurance premium that jumps 30%, a new roof, any one of them can land like a small financial earthquake on someone who budgeted for free. So treat your paid-off house the way you'd treat any other line item that costs you over $1,000 a month, because that's exactly what it is. Knowing that number in advance is the difference between a manageable expense and a nasty surprise. Third, remember that the trapped fortune is a tool, not just a trophy. That equity can be used through downsizing into something that fits your life and frees up cash, or through other ways of tapping it carefully to fund the retirement you actually want. It doesn't have to just sit there appreciating while you pinch pennies inside it. That's a personal decision, and there's no single right answer, but it should be a decision made on purpose, not a default you drifted into. And fourth, a gentle thought on the generational piece. If part of you aches at the idea that your kids or grandkids can't climb the ladder you climbed, know that the most powerful help you can give often isn't a bigger inheritance someday. It's a hand onto that first rung now, while they're young and need it, and while you're here to see it. Something to sit with. A fair, careful note, because broad numbers can mislead. These are national averages, and they hide enormous variation. In some hot markets, a paid-off house didn't grow 5 times, it grew 10 or more. In other places, it barely kept pace with inflation. Your house is your house. The average isn't your answer. And remember that honest asterisk from the start. The headline 5 times gain is mostly nominal, and the real inflation-adjusted gain is closer to 1 3/4. Substantial, but not magic. And let me say clearly, a paid-off house is still a genuine blessing, and I don't want a single number here to make you feel otherwise. No landlord can raise your rent. No bank can foreclose on a house you own outright. You have a secure, permanent place in the world that is truly yours, and in an uncertain age that is worth more than almost anything. The rising costs are real, but they're often manageable, and seniors in particular have property tax breaks and exemptions in most states that soften the blow. None of this is doom. It's just clarity so you can hold what you've built with open eyes. Step back, and you can see what really happened over these 40 years. In a single generation, the American home transformed from one thing into something else entirely. It went from being a place to live and a modest store of value into the largest pool of household wealth in the history of the country, and for millions of families, the retirement plan itself. That shift made a generation of homeowners wealthy on paper. It also, at the very same time, made homeownership harder to reach for the generation coming up behind them. And it quietly handed retirees a brand new job nobody trained them for: how to manage, protect, and eventually use a fortune they happen to be living inside of. The most remarkable part is how silently it all happened. No announcement, no headline on the day it changed. Just 4 decades of slow drift that left the word homeowner meaning something completely different than it did when Earl stood at that mailbox in 1985. The number that stops you cold is really just the visible tip of an enormous, invisible transformation in American life. So if you, like Earl, paid off your house years ago, take a real moment to appreciate what you did. You built something solid in a world that doesn't make that easy, and it's worth far more than you paid for it, in dollars, and in the deeper currency of security. That's an achievement. Honor it. But don't let that big, dazzling number fool you into thinking the house takes care of itself now. It doesn't. So know what it's worth, know what it costs, and decide, on purpose, how this remarkable asset fits into the life you have left, as a home to enjoy, as a resource to use, and maybe as a gift to give. Because a paid-off house was always at its heart about one thing: freedom. The freedom of a roof that's truly yours. Make sure that all these years later, it's still giving you exactly that, and not quietly taking it back, one rising bill at a time. The house was the dream. Now make it serve the dreamer.